You know what's amazing? We are living in a time when you can connect with people across borders and time zones with video, both live and recorded. It's incredible and has opened up so many doors and possibilities. But if we're being honest, virtual calls and recordings can feel a bit draining. The idea of sitting down and joining yet another conference call, watching another recording can sort of fill us with dread. So, what's going on? Well, first of all, let's think about the participant experience when we're joining a live call or we're watching a video. For many of us, we feel invisible. Would anyone notice if I were to stop paying attention or walk out of the room? Everyone here is looking down at their screen, and I honestly don't know what they are really doing. The other thing is, you're sitting at your computer, you have access to, well, everything. Sometimes our attention will wander and we look for distraction, or maybe a notification pops up and you see a new message or an email and it takes your attention away. Distractions are constant and our attention is a limited resource. Maybe that's happening to you right now as you watch this video. So, what's happening? Well, in many cases, we don't feel connected on these live calls or while watching recordings. And because of this, we're not fully present and we don't feel engaged. Now, let's think about the presenter experience. If you're the one who's actually leading the call or you are presenting the recording, you have something important to share with your audience and you want them to hear it. But are you engaging? What are you doing to help keep your audience's attention? And have you ever watched recordings back of yourself, maybe to see your presentation style and how it went? And when you've watched that recording, maybe you've had this thought, I thought I had more energy than that. Why don't I seem that interested? And if you don't sound that interested, why should your audience care? Also, if you regularly use slides for your presentations, have you considered just how much time you're spending in your screen share mode? A common trend is for people to focus on the slides while the speaker is tucked away in this little encorder, barely visible to the audience. And hey, maybe you like it this way, but do you think it helps you connect with your audience? Because connection is all about presence, both being present in the moment and having presence as a speaker. And that's what this mini course is about. Virtual presenting is not the same as in person, but you can develop a strong and engaging on-camera presence with a few small changes. Over the next few lessons, we are going to learn the 3 E's. These are practices you can start to implement right away on your next live call or recording. And this course is free and available to you thanks to mmhmm, which is the software I am using right now to record these videos. Now, as you watch the lessons, don't just listen to what I'm teaching, but also notice how I'm using the software and think about how you can start to transform both your live and recorded presentations and stay present and better connect with your audience. I'd like to ask if this situation feels familiar to you. You're talking to a friend or a loved one, and instead of looking at you, they're looking at their phone. Unfortunately, I think this experience is probably all too common these days. And I'm guessing in those moments, you don't feel connected to that person. You might even think, why even bother? Their attention is clearly elsewhere. Now, with that in mind, I'm going to show you a side-by-side photo. Which side does your eye go to? The version on the left or the version on the right? For most people, our brains are wired for eye contact. And that's the first of our 3 E's. Now we're drawn to people who are making eye contact with us, like the photo on the right. But most live calls and many recordings look more like the version on the left. The eyes are down on the screen. While we understand why people are looking down at their screens, it makes sense. The result is a lack of connection. But when you make eye contact in a virtual setting, people feel seen. They feel more connected to you, even if they don't know why. So how do we do this? Well, it's by looking into the camera. And whether you are using a built-in camera or an external one, looking into the camera lens gives the effect that you are looking directly at someone, like I'm doing right now as I record this. And if you're thinking about live calls, there's a very good chance you are wondering, but how can I see their reactions? This is the most common question that I get when I encourage people to look into the camera during live calls. So let's consider a few things. First of all, you might not have a choice. Not everyone turns their camera on, so you just don't always have the option to see everyone's reactions. So there's that. Secondly, a benefit of looking at the camera lens is you actually are less likely to be distracted by something that happens on your screen. Maybe someone's cute pet walks into their video window, or maybe a message pops up. When you keep your eyes on the camera lens, it can actually help keep you focused on the presentation or the person who's speaking. And finally, I am not suggesting that you stare 100% of the time right down the camera lens. It's actually natural to look around and glance down throughout your call. If the two of us were sitting right now at a table at coffee, I wouldn't stare right into your eyes the entire time and never look away. That would be unnatural and kind of creepy. But what if you do want both? You want to make eye contact and you do want to see people's reactions. Well, if you are someone who regularly presents on live calls or you create recorded content, you might want to consider a teleprompter. In this example, we can see Elgato's prompter. And while most people immediately think about scripts when they hear the word teleprompter, there's a lot more to it because you get to choose what's on the screen that sits directly in front of your camera. During live calls, you can actually see people on the call, like in this photo right here. If you look at the teleprompter screen, it's actually people who are on a Zoom call. Or you could choose to have your speaker notes or maybe a slide preview. For recordings, you could choose, do you want to see your notes, a slide preview, or maybe you do want to read from a transcript. If we consider right now, I'm actually using the mini remote that's part of mmhmm's software, and it includes my notes, and I can see a preview of my current slide and the next slide. Since the mini remote is in the teleprompter screen, I'm able to maintain eye contact and look directly in the camera while simultaneously seeing my notes and the preview. But regardless of your tech setup, here's how you can get started with making eye contact in the virtual setting. First, work up to it. I want you to aim for 80%. And I know that sounds like a lot. It is, but work up to it. Start slow, look at the camera as much as you can. I think you'll probably continue to look at the screen, but you can practice. The other thing is while you're even on your phone, let's say you take a video call on your phone, practice looking up into the camera lens at the top as much as you can. You will start to get into the habit, but it will take some practice. The other thing I want you to consider is that I'd like you to practice looking into the camera lens while you're speaking and while other people are talking. In other words, you're listening to someone else on a live call. I know it's tempting to want to watch the screen when someone else is talking, but if you look into the camera, they will feel like you are really listening to them and they are truly being heard because they can see you looking at them. And I find I'm able to better listen to what they're saying when they're speaking when I'm focused on the camera and not distracted by other things that are happening on the screen. Finally, you can do things to draw your eye. Maybe you look towards an indicator light on your camera, if your camera has one. Some people will take the little sticky sign here note and have it posted so it's pointing directly at their camera. You could also keep your notes or even the call. Sometimes I'll make a gallery really small and put it very close to my camera if I'm not using a teleprompter. So all I have to do is just gently look down and I can look back up again. And of course, you could always invest in a teleprompter so you can look at the camera and see people's faces. Think of eye contact as your secret weapon. Regardless of your setup or your tech, you can look into the camera and you can connect more deeply with your audience, even if they don't realize what it is you are doing differently. Something will happen, and even if they don't know what is going on, it will stand out. And we've just taken a look at the first of the 3 E's, which is eye contact. Let's move on to the next lesson where you're going to learn why words are just one part of the equation when we're speaking. I'm curious. The last time you prepared a presentation, how long did you spend thinking about what you wanted your audience to feel? It's common to spend most of our time thinking about the words we want to say, but not necessarily considering how we actually want to say it. And if you're wondering why you should care, let's consider this fact. People hear the sound of your voice before they hear the words you actually say. Let's actually consider the act of speaking. Right now, I'm using air from my lungs and I'm using my vocal cords to project sound waves. Your ear then translates those sound waves into your brain by first going into the amygdala, which senses the emotion behind your voice. Then it travels to your prefrontal cortex, the part that actually interprets the words. So let's consider an example of how the sound can change the meaning of a word. I want you to imagine that there is a loved one sitting in the next room, and maybe there actually is right now. If possible, say their name out loud. Do you have someone in mind? Good. Let's consider the first scenario. You just won the lottery. You just got off the phone. This is so exciting. It is life-changing news, and you need to tell them right away. So you need to call them into the room. How do you say their name? If you're willing, say it how you would say it if you actually won the lottery. I'm guessing that when they hear you call their name, they're excited to come into the room. They want to know what's going on, what is all the fuss about, because they can hear it in your voice, even though you literally just said one word, their name. Now let's change course. You just broke a family heirloom. It was completely by accident, but it's been in the family for generations. And you are kind of dreading telling them, but you know you just have to get it over with because they are going to figure out that this happened. Now say their name. I'm going to guess it doesn't sound anything like it did when you told them about the lottery. It probably is filled with some hesitation and trepidation and nervous energy, enough that they're probably going to wonder if they should really enter the room or not. It's going to prime them. But once again, all you said is their name. Just that one same word that, if we're counting, you might have said 3 times now. Your voice contains so much information, even when you're only saying one word. So, what we want you to do is actually don't just focus on the words you say, but also on how you say them. Consider the emotion you want your audience to feel and what you want to convey, and match the voice to your message. It deepens the message and it strengthens the message. It can also completely change the meaning. Let's look at another example. You are sitting in a boardroom, and frankly, the team is just acknowledging that things aren't really working right now. And someone says the words you see in front of yourself. Now, this is a simple question. This question, though, can be said a few different ways that completely change the meaning. Let's consider someone just truly asking a question born completely from curiosity. Well, what if there's a better way? Genuinely asking, does anyone know? Is there a better way? Is this a possibility? That's a true question. But now imagine someone in the room says it like this. Well, what if there's a better way? Now, if I hear that, I'm leaning in and I'm waiting to hear what they're going to say next, because you know that wasn't a real question. That person already has an answer. Same sentence, 2 very different meanings. So paying attention to how you're actually expressing yourself is something that's actually really important for communication with others. By connecting the sound of your voice to the intention and the emotion behind the message, you don't just strengthen it, you also sound more interesting. A voice with a range of emotions has more vocal variety. Just like we don't want to listen to a song that just plays one note over and over again, you don't want to listen to a voice that only has one note. That's called monotone. Monotone voices are the ones that we tend to naturally tune out. It's hard to pay attention for a long time. They don't really have a lot of vocal variety. They don't sound interesting. The speaker definitely does not sound that interested. Now, I'm obviously exaggerating my monotone example, but it is actually easier than you think to slip into a monotone speaking pattern that lacks any vocal variety. And it's very easy to tune that out. So, this is why we want to practice the second E, which is emotionality. Consider the emotion you want to convey with your voice. And if we start to combine the first 2, you're actually making eye contact and matching the emotion of the message behind your words. That deepens the connection with your audience. But even with these 2 things, something else might be missing, which we'll cover in the next lesson. I'd like to take you back in time for a moment. It's 2019, and I've only recently started my own business. I've just spent hours preparing my room to record and still can't seem to manage to get my backdrop straight. But I am determined to film a couple of short videos for my website. I hit record and I read those scripts that I've practiced so many times, and I'm feeling confident and self assured. That is, until I start watching back the recordings. Something isn't adding up. I do not sound that interested or engaged at all. I actually sound a little bored. But that doesn't make any sense because I did not feel that way when I was recording the videos. It really wouldn't be until a year later that I actually learned what was happening on that day. You see, the camera dulls our energy. I mean, the camera is really not our friend. Everyone says it adds 10 pounds, but it also makes you boring. I mean, can't we catch a break? But there is something we can do about it. We can compensate. Because we know that this is happening, we can make up for it. I like to think of the idea of turning up a dial, and you are going to increase, maybe exaggerate your energy 10 to 20% more than usual, and your audience is actually going to see the version that you intended to show, not the original version that might be a little bit duller and stripped down of your energy. There's a chance that right now you don't believe me, and I get that. But there's a way to test for yourself, and it's actually quite easy to do. You're going to record yourself twice, pick any subject, but preferably one that you like. Talk about it for a minute or two, then do it again, but this time, dial up the energy. Increase your energy levels on that second recording. Now, this is when people say, won't that feel uncomfortable? And yes, it probably will, at least in the beginning. But this is when we move on to the second part of this experiment. I want you to watch both back and compare the two. The odds are good that your second video isn't nearly as awkward as you felt while you were recording it. That is, putting aside the fact that almost no one wants to watch back recordings of themselves. And I also acknowledge that we're not always the best judges of ourselves anyway. In that case, I actually encourage you to ask a trusted friend, somebody who knows you well enough to say whether or not you still sound like yourself. The idea is to sound like yourself, but a really engaged, interested version of yourself. And if that dial is way too high, your friend is going to tell you. Maybe you are just too much, you're overdoing it, and you can pull that dial back. Now, there's good news here. Emotionality and energy are linked. If you start to add more emotion to your voice, your energy levels are actually going to naturally increase. And if you start to increase your energy, then your emotionality starts to increase. This means you can focus on the one that feels most comfortable to you, and both of them should get better. Now, we've covered the 3 E's: eye contact, emotionality, and energy. But we're not done just yet, because there is another common practice that can hold us back from connecting with our audience, and we're going to cover that in our final lesson. Up until now, we have focused on ways to create a stronger and more engaging on-camera presence. Practicing the 3 E's is going to help you feel more confident, especially once you start to experience the impact. When people are paying more attention to your presentations, when they engage with what you're saying, and when they leave feeling more inspired than drained. Your on-camera presence connects you with your audience, which is why it pains me when a speaker lets their visuals take over and kind of displace them. Please, please stop hiding behind the screen share. Or maybe this sounds familiar to you as a participant. You enter a live call and the slides are already being shared. You've got the title slide there. The host will introduce the speaker and then they start talking and they never leave the corner. Sure, as a viewer, you could adjust the size of the speaker window, but the message that's being sent is that the screen share is the focus, not the speaker. And with recorded content, in many cases, you never see the speaker. You only see slides and hear their voice. Sure, this makes it easier for the presenter to read from a script or easily edit out mistakes, but it also disconnects the speaker from the audience. So find a balance. Use visuals to help guide your audience and reinforce key points and ideas and examples, but don't get lost behind the visuals. If this idea is new to you and you are used to presenting with slides and screen share, then ease into it. Here are a few things you can consider. Start in speaker view before you share your screen. Give everyone a chance to actually see you and meet you before your video is minimized or reduced. Keep your screen shared only when you need it. It's easy to just start a screen share and just leave it that way until the end, but there might be some natural breaks where it really makes sense to just stop the screen share, return to you as the focus, and then you can always go back to the screen share when needed. And also keep practicing those 3 E's so that you can connect with your audience without relying on visuals. So when it is just you as a speaker, you can still feel confident that people are going to stay with you. Find this balance that works for you, considering the best experience for you, but also the audience. And with time and repetition, then maybe you'll want to start to experiment. And you can start to take your presenting up a level by using software to create this visual variety. Add graphics to your live video window, like having some words at the bottom of the screen, and your camera still stays focused on you as the speaker. This is one example of how you can blend visuals plus still be center stage. I consider the idea of support and surprise. Support your audience's understanding of your message with elements like visuals and graphics and imagery and stories, but also surprise the audience by mixing up the visuals. Since most presenters are not using software to add graphics on their screen, it's still really surprising to most people when they see them. Start to think about your presentation like a storyboard, considering what will your audience see and when will they see it? What order will they see it? And then you can use software to make it happen. Like in this screenshot where you can see, you can see all the different slides that I have along the bottom. I've got different layouts, switching my camera positioning, adding slides, text overlays, and using images. Once it's all ready, you could record directly in the app, like I'm doing right now, or you can deliver your presentation live, like in this Zoom meeting example. By using what's called a virtual camera, it means that you can select your camera from the software instead of just choosing your regular camera. And everything that's in the software is going to be showing in your Zoom meeting. Regardless of whether you decide to use software for graphics or not, you can definitely start practicing the 3 E's and stop hiding behind the screen share in order to connect with your audience using a stronger, more engaging on-camera presence that leaves a lasting impact.